I met him.
I met him
At a party.
on the beach.
I saw him walk in and he just passed me by, and I thought to myself, there he is, that's him. As if I'd been waiting for him or something. I saw him walk outside and something just made me follow him. I don't think I've ever done that before, just pursue some guy. But I did. He was outside smoking and talking to a friend of mine, which seemed like amazing good luck. So I introduced myself, and that was that. You know what I mean? People say there's no such thing as love at first sight, but I don't know. I swear I fell in love at that moment. His dark hair, his eyes, his smile, the way he smoked even. We left the party and we went to the beach, and he asked me what type of music I wanted to listen to, and I said Roxy music. And he laughed and said, why don't I go buy the ring now? Now I know that's totally corny, but I fell for it. I thought it was absolutely perfect. Mal, was on Cape for the week from Connecticut. And I thought to myself, Connecticut isn't that far away. That night we went to the guard stand at the beach, and he told me I was beautiful, and he kissed me. And the rest of the week was sealed. The next day I went to his house in Eastham, and he had written me a poem, and he read it to me as we swung in his hammock. And I thought he was absolutely wonderful.
He was walking by and my friend says, there he is, that's him, the guy I've been telling you about. I thought he was cute. So we're at Sherwood Island one day, my best friend Carol and I, and he walks by and she says, he's absolutely wonderful. I told him I had someone to fix him up with. And so I say, if he's so wonderful, why don't you just date him yourself? And she laughs and says, I can't believe how quick you are to judge me. And just because she's so smug, I stand up and walk over to him by myself. And I say, hey, I'm Sasha. And he says, hi, I'm Malcolm. And that was that. People say there's no such thing as love at first sight, but I really do believe that I fell in love with him at that moment. So I sat down on the towel next to him. We talked all afternoon, which then turned into evening at De Rosa's Pizza, which is right by my house, so I kept hoping that my dad and Kara and Tommy didn't walk by, and then they'd all gape at me eating with this most amazing guy, and then I'd have to introduce him to them. And so I just kept hoping that didn't happen. And he called me beautiful, told me my eyes sparkled, looked almost feline. That first month, he swept me off my feet, wrote me poetry, picked me fresh flowers, pushed me on swings, took me on rides on his motorcycles. It was spring, and it was like everything you read about in fairy tales.
I met Sasha about 2 years ago. She's like an angel. She walked right up to me on the beach and shook my hand and basically knocked me over. It was like a fairy tale. She's gorgeous. Long brown hair, sweet smile, always ready to laugh. I'm a total romantic, so I really went all out in the beginning, and she was so amazing. There was nothing I could do but be swept along in her spell. I don't think my mom was too keen on the idea at first because I'd just gotten into UConn, but I kept my grades up and she liked Sasha, so after a while she just accepted it and waited for us to grow up and graduate so that she could plan our wedding. My mom really doesn't like it when her plans go astray. But in the beginning, who thought anything would go astray? It was all very head in the clouds romantic in the beginning.
That week we spent together was the most romantic, head in the clouds experience I'd ever had in my life. I really was just swept off my feet in some kind of spell. Malcolm and I realized that Catcher in the Rye was both our favorite books, so we'd go to the beach and he'd read aloud to me, in Holden's own words. Now that really killed me. He also got me wildflowers from this little old lady who sold them on the side of the road, and he just kept doing things like that to knock me off my feet. And I fell for him. Hard. I know it was stupid on my part, and I wasn't really thinking, but these days were going by like sort of a dream, and I couldn't do anything about it. Days filled with bike rides, sailing, and kisses. And then one day he told me, just like suddenly, that he had a girlfriend. And it all came crashing down. When he told me things aren't good between us anyway, so I distinctly remember, I just pretended it didn't matter. That he was totally falling for me and that she didn't really exist.
But somewhere along the line in my relationship with Sasha, she started to almost not even exist. I mean, with school and stuff going on, I kind of forgot her. I know that sounds awful, but it's really what was going on. And then I started to feel sick, like tired all the time and not right. And I guess I began ignoring Sasha even more. She'd get really mad at me and blow up, and I'd yell back and slam out of the apartment and ride really fast on 95 on my motorcycle. I love that. Wind whipping in your face so hard that it blows all the thoughts and emotions out of your head. Like, you can't think of who you're not pleasing or neglecting or whatever. And then I went to the doctor and it all came crashing down. I mean, really, crashing. He told me I had leukemia. Leukemia. I mean, what do you say to that? I didn't know what to say, what to do. And Sasha at that point became so needy that I packed a bag and got on my bike and rode off to Cape Cod. We'd been going there since I was a kid, and I knew that our house in East Ham would be empty. So I got on my bike and blew out of there. End of fairy tale.
But the fairy tale didn't last. We'd got an apartment in Stamford, well, just outside. And we'd been living there for about a year, and then things started to get weird. He started ignoring me. That went on for a while, and then he was always tired, and I'd get upset, we'd have fights, and then one day I came home and he was gone. Just disappeared. He didn't even call me for a day or two, and then only to tell me where he was. He didn't say why he'd left, and he didn't say when he'd be back. I didn't understand what was happening. I just felt horrible. I even thought about driving down to Cape that day and confronting him, or at least make him tell me what was wrong. But I didn't. I knew I shouldn't. It was just so weird, though. 6 months ago, he was singing Roxy music to me in restaurants in Stamford. Totally embarrassing, but totally wonderful. Now it was like I didn't exist. I remember the first night he called me from Cape. He sounded completely strange. Like, I don't know. Like, something different.
And then there was Chloe. She was something really different. Like a spitfire. Brown hair, red lips. She was amazing. I just decided to go to this party one night, down the street, just to get away from myself, and she was suddenly there next to me, introducing herself to me, tilting her head up at me, moving her wrist in just a certain way, and I felt weird. I don't know how to explain it, just different, strange. Like I was myself again. Like I was myself without any girlfriend or school or sickness. Like I hadn't in a long time been myself. And we went down to the beach and her eyes sort of hypnotized me, and Christ, I was falling for her and pushing Sasha further and further from my mind. And I know it's horrible. I can't say anything in defense of myself, but Chloe was all I could think of.
I'm sure it was horrible just to pursue it, and I won't even try to defend myself. But all I could think about was him. We spent so much time together, and I felt like I knew him better than some people I'd known for years. I even met his family when they came down to the Cape on the 4th of July, watched fireworks with him and his sister. I think his mother was wondering what I was up to, who I was, and why I was spending so much time with her son, who had a girlfriend. But I pushed it to the back of my head. because I wanted to forget he would leave. Leave and go back to another world, another life, another girl. That other world of his, it wasn't real to me. The only thing that was real was us. And then he left. We stayed up almost the whole night before he left. I cried, and so did Mal. And we didn't even get to finish reading Catcher in the Rye. But he had to go. We promised to write each other. And this is where it continues to be bad, because the reason we had to write and not call was because of her. Because Mal didn't want her to know about us. And if I had had any thought about it, I would have realized that Malcolm had no intention of breaking up with her. But I didn't feel like realizing it. So I wrote to a school P.O. box, and I still remember it. P.O. Box 180. And he wrote me pages and pages of his thoughts, feelings, and late-night ramblings. Instead of studying, he wrote to me. And it kept me hanging on to some dream or other.
When I left the Cape, it killed me. It was like this dream I'd had. This dream I wanted to hang on to was over. We'd spend every second together, every minute. It doesn't really sound believable, but it hurt so much leaving the Cape. Not only was it the pain of leaving her, but I guess the pain of going back to the illness. For that 1 week, I'd forgotten it. Hadn't yet felt the real pain. Hadn't been in treatment. And we'd gotten so close in just a week. People said that the Cape is a magical place, and that's how it was for us. Riding back to Stamford on my bike, I couldn't shake the images. Reading Catcher in the Rye on the beach. Buying flowers from a little old lady on the side of the road. Lazy afternoons in the hammock. I think my mistake was introducing Chloe to my mom. Not that my mom didn't like her. I mean, I don't think she gave two thoughts about Chloe or even who she was, but I distinctly remember the morning after, coming into the kitchen and my mom looking at me and saying, "I don't know what it is you're doing, but you'd better end it now." Of course I blew out of there, got on my bike and rode over to Chloe's, but it was the beginning of me remembering about Sasha. And as wrong as it may seem now, I went home a few days later, bought a ring, and asked Sasha to marry me. I now know that it was out of guilt, but I don't know what I thought about it at the time. I think I knew it wasn't real. And she said yes.
Sometime in the fall, Mal mentioned he was coming down to the Cape for Christmas break, and I kind of lost myself in the excitement of all of that. Like my whole existence became a total concentration of that visit. It was everything. But I was fairly stupid, really. I think I was hoping that he would come down to the Cape and tell me they were finished. His letters never mentioned her, or said anything like, "Oh, by the way, Sasha and I just got engaged." No, he let me know when he was standing in my apartment holding me, as if he'd mentioned in all of his letters before that he was actually planning a wedding. I don't even know how to begin to describe how I felt. The next day I took a letter from the refrigerator that he'd written me this summer, and I burned it while smoking one of his cigarettes. It just said, "The juice is in the fridge." It was stupid, but he'd written it. The next day Mal came over and he noticed the note wasn't on the fridge anymore, and he got mad at me. And still to this day, I think, wow, what a jerk.
Then Christmas rolled around. We spent the holiday apart. He'd gone to his mom's house and didn't even bother inviting me. Even now, I still think, what a jerk. And then he just run off to Cape Cod again. And this time I actually almost went after him. It wasn't, however, my own sense of propriety that stopped me, but a letter from a girl named Chloe. And then suddenly everything made sense. The engagement, guilt. God, I hated him at that moment, really. And I hated her, Chloe. What a name. I could just imagine her, some blonde beach babe. That week, I had moved back to my house in Wilton. It was a pain because I had to tell everyone what had happened and explain everything. And when Malcolm finally came back home, I'd gotten over a lot of the hurt and anger that I was feeling, but I still didn't want to talk to him. I left the ring on the kitchen table next to the letter from Chloe, and I figured he'd understand what had happened, and that would be that. We didn't need to talk or anything. But of course we had to discuss it, and of course he had to tell me all about her, all about his letters to Chloe, everything.
All fall, I'd written letters to Chloe. I'd stay up late, Sasha'd be asleep. I was usually studying, and I'd stop, light up a cigarette, and think about Chloe. I'd write pages and pages, philosophize about life, death, stupid stuff, about how much I missed her. I would write about everything. Everything except the leukemia, the engagement and the leukemia. And I knew I had to tell her. So I made the reason that I had to go out to the Cape during Christmas was to tell Chloe everything, to come clean. But when I got there and I told her about the engagement, she totally freaked out. I wish I hadn't told her. I wished I'd just kept it a secret. And I knew I couldn't tell her about being sick now. I'd started to feel really bad and I was getting treatment secretly. I don't even know why I didn't tell anybody. It was stupid. It started with lying to Sasha and it just escalated from there. We still spent the whole week together. But it was sad. It was like saying goodbye the whole time. The day after I told her, I went over to her house and saw that she'd burned a note from the summer that I'd written to her. And it killed me. When we did say goodbye, we cried so hard thinking it was over between us. The ridiculous thing is, I thought I was going home to Sasha to get married. But of course she'd found a letter from Chloe and had ended our relationship before I could ever get home. My mom was so pissed at me, but I was too angry at myself to care about what anyone else thought. When I finally did see Sasha again, we just cried. And then I told her about being sick and we cried even harder. The weird thing is, I really did love them both.
I don't know. I really did love him. And I cried so hard losing him. I know it was a summer romance, but it was something I had never experienced before. Sometimes when I tell people, they laugh or smirk and tell me, you know, summer romances never last, as if it didn't really count or matter. But it mattered to me. Malcolm mattered to me. I cried so much when it was over. I guess I still can, especially when I think about what he really wasn't telling me. About being sick. I think he thought that if he didn't tell anyone, that it wouldn't be real. He wouldn't be sick. But the thing about leukemia is that it doesn't care who you tell, because it's real anyway. A couple months after Christmas, he called me to tell me. He also, of course, told me about his breakup with Sasha, and I can't say I was too sorry about that. I don't know, he seemed like a forced optimistic, saying he thought the treatments were getting better, and that he was doing good, and they were looking for a bone marrow match in his family. I don't know. Hanging up, I thought back to that first night with Mal in his car listening to Roxy music. I really did love him, and I don't regret a moment of anything we had.
I don't regret my relationship with Malcolm at all. In fact, in the end, it actually made me realize that I don't need others. Don't need to hang on to others to get what I need. When we finally did meet up, we've kind of fell into each other's arms and cried for a long time. And then he told me he was sick, and we cried all over again. In the end, we kind of got together again. Not like before, but I needed to be there for him. And he got really sick. No one in his family was a bone marrow match. So I'd go over there a lot and sit with him and hold his hand and sing to him Roxy music, More Than This. Which is what he sang to me at the Crab Shack over a candlelit dinner a couple years ago. You know, more than this. You know there's nothing more than this. I don't know. He was so intense, so racing down the street on his motorcycle. I used to love sitting behind him, holding him tight, wind whipping at the sides of me, but me being so protected by him still. I loved him so much. And I think he loved me too. But when he died,
it was like the end of everything. I actually got a letter from Sasha to tell me when the memorial service would be. And I didn't know if I could go, face his memory, face her. But I had to. I listened to his music all the way out there, and I cried a good deal of the ride too. I knew that then, despite what anyone says about summer romances, I knew I loved him. And I also knew that he loved me. I didn't know how I was going to go through the whole ordeal. The church where the service was totally packed, and I guess I had a really easy time hiding in the corner. No one really looked at me to wonder who I was. He had so many people saying so many wonderful things about him, and it made me feel even more alone, more gypped out of the time I could have spent with him, getting to know him and the people in his life. Leaving, I heard someone calling my name, and I knew it was Sasha. And I stopped and let her catch up to me. I don't think I had any idea of what she was going to say to me, but she surprised me anyway by taking my hands in hers and just holding them there for a moment. I didn't have anything to say, so I guess I didn't say anything at all.
It's hard to say. I loved them both. It hurt leaving them both. But I can't say if I loved one more than the other. There was Sasha. We'd been together forever, and she was there at the end. The touch of her hand could touch my heart. We had so many memories. But I really did fall in love with Chloe that summer. We were kindred spirits. We just knew each other. Sitting there on the lifeguard stand, a red moon rising over the water, looking into her eyes. There was just something about us, something about Chloe. But it all ended too soon to know much. You know, in the end, I think I learned that there really is nothing more than this.
More than this. You know there's nothing more